All right, guys, so here's my rant. As you all know by now, I'm COVID-19 positive. My mother and my grandfather went to get tested today, and my wife and daughter are going to get tested tomorrow. I'm in recovery. I'm doing well. Things are going good for me. That being said, the question I'm getting the most from people right now who are looking to me for information because I'm trying to share my experience. The question I keep getting is where do I go get tested? I'm having symptoms. How do I go get tested? And the unfortunate answer is I don't know. I don't know how to tell you that. So the CDC's website recommends that you call your primary care physician. Since I have Kaiser Permanente, I can't call my Kaiser doctor directly. I call Kaiser. They set it up, and they did a great job. For me, because I had known exposure, I already had a fever, symptoms that were very noticeable, and they set me up, got me tested. Things went fine. Setting up testing for my mother, grandfather, wife, and daughter today has been one of the most stressful things I've ever done. And it shouldn't be. We're all in this together, right? We should all have an easy time reaching out to our medical care team and getting tested, especially when you have direct exposure or people you live with that are being diagnosed. So CDC recommends that you call your primary care physician. So that's what I did with my mother and grandfather. I called him. I called his office. His secretary answered, said, she would talk to the doctor. I gave her the entire spiel, told her everything, told her that I'm a known COVID positive. And my mother and grandfather are both showing symptoms. Neither one of them produced a fever yet, but they're both coughing, sore throat. It's a bad sign. So I had the stress of that on me, and I'm trying to talk to this lady, and she's saying, well, if they don't have any symptoms, you can't be tested. Well, I said, well, they have symptoms, but not fever. She goes, well, that's the primary symptom that you have to show. Well, fever doesn't show up for, in my case, day four. Day four, fever showed up, and I was transmitting and being careless until I had a fever. Now we know that there's earlier symptoms, and you can get tested earlier. And anyway, doctor says, we don't do that in the office anyway. Go to the ER. Just walk to the ER. Walk in. Well, on the CDC's website and also the healthcare people that I've talked to and the experience that I've had, that's the last thing that they want you to do is just walk in to a hospital. If you think you have COVID, they want you to use precaution. They want you to call ahead, schedule everything, schedule the test. Most of the tests are being done in drive-through facilities now and outside of buildings. They're trying to keep people inside of buildings minimized to exposure. They're trying to contain people. So when he said that, I'm like, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't be telling people to do that. I'll thank you, but no thank you. So I called the ER directly, and they said, well, without a doctor's order, we can't do it. So they could come in and be screened through the ER if necessary. And I told them, we're pretty positive. They have absolutely shown signs of exposure, etc. And they said that, they are currently only testing people that come in with a doctor's order, or they're there and get a doctor's order from one of the attending physicians in the ER. So after hearing this, we thought maybe we'll just send them directly to the ER, etc. We didn't. I used a last-ditch effort, and I called one of the healthcare workers for Department of Health for Virginia that I've been dealing with directly. And I said, hey, my mother, my grandfather are showing symptoms, and they've been around me. They had been around me before I started self-isolation, and they, they're showing symptoms. And she said, let me call the ER and get them right in there. We'll get them fast tracked. So she called the emergency room, talked to the charge nurse, and had them pre-registered, pre-enrolled, already ready to go. They put on masks. They went in. When they got there, they walked right past the front desk. The people there are like, we're expecting you. Come on in. Here's your tests. Got tested. Got sent home. Awesome. Well, what if I didn't have that contact? What if I didn't have that ability to reach out to a person because I'm already going through this? What if this was our first time? What if this is our first exposure to it? How do we get to the point where we know people? We shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to know people. This is becoming a really long video. I'm sorry, but there's a second part to this now. My wife and daughter, they share an insurance company with me. They share Kaiser Permanente, and we all have the same profile. So on mine, they can see my wife and daughter and all that. So you would think it'd be way easier for that to happen. So we called Kaiser and spoke to a nurse. I first gave them my medical record number and said, take a look at my chart. And they said, oh, wow, you're a positive. How can we help you? And I said, well, my wife and daughter are starting to show signs. And they're like, oh, if you're not calling for you, well, we need their medical record info. So I gave them their medical record info, and they say, well, are they having symptoms? Yes. My wife has a scratchy throat, little cough, little fatigue. She's a little short of breath. And say, any fever? No fever yet. But again, she's having symptoms. I said, what about your daughter? I said, well, she's just had a little cough this morning, but she's never had a cough before. She doesn't cough. That's not her. And again, they asked about fever, and they're really looking for that fever. Well, they haven't had fever yet, so they say, well, we can see what we can do. We're going to set them up with a phone visit or a video visit. And so both doctors called, and a pediatrician for Aria, my daughter, and a regular doctor for my wife, both called and had video visit or telephone visit with my wife, and both of them disqualified my wife and daughter for testing on the basis that they didn't have fever. So, yeah, even though they live in the same house as me, even though they've had exposure, even though the 9th, 10th, and 11th when I was positive and showing symptoms, but untested, they were sharing a couch with me and cuddling up and watching TV with me, and all the fun things we do as a family. So I had to call my infectious disease doctor, who's been checking in on me, kind of learning from my progress or learning from my situation, because this is so new, and I was Kaiser Permanente's first confirmed positive. So I called her and started talking to her about this situation. She right away was like, no, that's unacceptable. They need to get tested. Let me put in the order right now. So she put in an order, but the testing facility's closed, which I think should be 24 hours, right? I mean, we should put these tests out as much as possible. We shouldn't be disqualifying people for testing. We should be testing, right? Anyway, that's my rant. Yeah. How do we get tested, guys?